Many people think that if you enter the United States, you can fix your immigration status merely by marrying a US citizen. That's not exactly true. If you've entered the United States without inspection or illegally, it's especially not true, and that's what this video discusses. This topic is something I explain during 1-hour-long consultations, so I'm gonna do the best I can to explain it in a YouTube video. And it all begins with the concept of unlawful presence. So if somebody illegally or without inspection enters the United States, day one in the United States, they have 1 day of unlawful presence. Once they accumulate 180 days of unlawful presence, right? They've been here for 6 months. If they step foot outside of the United States, they trigger a 3-year bar from entering the United States. They're not allowed back in for at least 3 years. They're probably not even able to apply to re-enter for 3 years. Now, if that person has more than 1 year of unlawful presence, and then they step foot outside the United States, they've now triggered a 10-year bar from re-entering the United States. So this creates problems after you try to apply for a green card. If you've entered the United States illegally, you need to eventually go back to the US Embassy or consulate in your home country to use your US citizen spouse or family member to come back into the United States legally. There are some exceptions, like if you have a military member in your family, but for the most part, you need to consular process back into the US if you entered illegally. Now, what happens if you go to your interview and you've been in the US illegally for more than 1 year? The moment you go to your interview outside of the United States, you've triggered a 10-year bar from re-entering. And when you go to the consulate, the officer is going to say, yeah, I believe it's a real marriage, but so sorry, you're ineligible for 10 years. You need a waiver for your unlawful presence. So that brings me to the unlawful presence waiver. Before you leave the United States, we need to apply for forgiveness of your unlawful presence. This is a difficult process. It typically requires showing extreme hardship to your US citizen spouse if you're not allowed to re-enter the US after your interview. There are other ways to get the waiver approved, but this is the most common pathway. If we apply for the waiver while you're in the US and it gets approved, now you can safely leave the US knowing that your unlawful presence will not trigger the bar, and that won't be an issue creating a barrier for you to re-enter the US. There could still be other issues if you have like criminal history or whatever, but we can at least apply for the unlawful presence waiver, which for most people is the biggest barrier to them being able to re-enter the US. If you've entered the United States without inspection and you're considering marrying a US citizen, or you've already married a US citizen, I would urge you to be very careful about how you proceed. Some people will do this process without a lawyer. I would urge you not to do it without a lawyer. And let me explain why. Right? So some people can file the family petition by themselves. It's probably not that hard for most people. It'll get approved. The case will get transferred to the consulate, and then the consulate will schedule an interview for you after you follow all of their instructions. It is doable, but they never at any stage tell you that you might be inadmissible or that you need a waiver before you leave the United States. They'll just give you instructions, and if you follow those instructions, your spouse might end up stuck outside of the United States for years or longer. That's the nightmare situation that we're trying to avoid here. What should you do with this information? Well, what I would do is consult with a lawyer so that you can determine what the chances are of getting approved for the unlawful presence waiver. The lawyer should really go through like your whole lives to determine what hardships might be available to strengthen the waiver and improve the chances of ultimately getting your green card. If you're considering going through this, my office is always available to help. And if you're new to this channel, be sure to subscribe because I'm going to be posting more videos on this and other immigration topics in the weeks to come.